Was it nerve-wracking?
It was. You never know how it's going to come out in the end.
Well, and what do you have to, like, what would you say to the people who voted for you?
I want to thank everyone who supported me throughout this whole campaign, and I want to thank the voters who expressed their confidence in me today, and I hope to live up to that over the next 4 years.
Any particular topic or any particular subject that you kind of want to dive into first, or?
Not right now. We have a lot to think about right now.
Thank you. You know, Jira, I think it was a bit of an upset to see two incumbent commissioners voted out this time, although they were close races. What happened? What do you think happened?
Well,
in this election?
You know, I believe, and I have said publicly, that most of the citizens, we've noticed a very low level of political talking. There hasn't been that much, even in it's an election year. And
there was very little reporting.
Very little reporting.
Very little.
And I firmly believe that most people, as much as 4 or 5 months ago, had already made up their mind. And you know,
of the 23% who bothered to vote.
Of the 23%, they had made up their mind a long time ago. Why do I think it happened? Well, it's just that I have, as I pointed out in my many rants, all three of them, the two that lost certainly, have been for higher taxes. And as a Republican, I take that very personal. I realize you're a nonpartisan, but as a Republican, I take that personal. Okay, our mantra is supposed to be smaller government, lower taxes, and personal responsibility. And them representing me as a Republican to never give a rollback. They never gave a rollback. They had several opportunities. Supported additional sales tax. At every mention that a citizen came forward and said, can we trim this? Can we reduce this? Do we have too many employees? Do we have too many cars? All citizens, not just me, all citizens were met with a great deal of resistance. And you know, and they've made some decisions that people really didn't like. Allowing alcohol in a children's park. The alcohol issue itself, doing it as a mail-out ballot, which was the first time in the history of Santa Rosa County, rather than voting at the polls. I think there's just a myriad of issues there that, you know, in most election cycles, people will be a little mad about one thing. But look, I mean, I think people, honest to goodness, in Santa Rosa County and Escambia County, they looked at this thing like, you guys taxed us so bad that the state had to get involved to keep you from doing it any further, and they had just had enough.
And that was a limitation. It came from the state legislature last year.
Yeah.
Is it possible that the 20% who were angry, who turned out, decided things for perhaps 80% who didn't care, or maybe felt differently even?
I categorize it differently. You know, in an election, a candidate, as we call it, you have to work your base. You have to get your base enthused. I don't even think the people that voted for these two candidates that did not get reelected, I don't think they could even get their own bases excited about this election. And what you will find quite often is that a person will stay at home rather than vote against their candidate that they supported the last time.
True.
So there was no real emotion for the John Broxton people or the Tom Stewart people to get up in arms and run down to the polls. But there was a great deal of ammunition for angry citizens to go down there and say, we've had enough. And I think they have pretty successfully said, we've had enough.
Well, they effected a big change.
Well, they certainly did. I mean, the margin of victory for Jim Williamson was a little bit larger against Tom Stewart than Lane Lynchard, but in politics it only takes one vote. Lane Lynchard pretty much led most of the night. So every precinct, I haven't gone back and looked at every one of them, but I think you're going to see it's a pretty solid pattern all night long across the board, and that's what I said earlier. I felt like, especially in these two races, or in these three races, that the vote would be pretty much the same in every precinct. I've still got to look at it yet, but I think that 22 or 23% that's angry, they were angry in every precinct. It wasn't just angry in one precinct. So,
Well, it's interesting, you know, we sort of touched on the fact that newspaper coverage and media coverage was fairly poor on this election. And I wonder if a lack of coverage kind of induced people to just ignore it, and maybe that's why we only got a 20% turnout.
well, you know,
And maybe that was not the turnout, maybe that was not the result that, we know some of the media had predicted a different result. And maybe their own lack of coverage it induced a different result than they were planning for.
you know, I would always want a large educated vote, but let's go back to the wet dry vote, for example. They did a mail out ballot because the experts said if you do a mail out ballot, you stand a better chance to get that passed.
You reach the most people.
Reaching most people.
Yes.
In the sales tax, they wanted to do that on an odd day, and it couldn't be held at the same time of vote. They wanted to do that at a time where they knew the voter turnout would be low, which would help them.
We saw exactly the opposite with the sales tax vote.
Right, and there's a lot of little games, ladies and gentlemen. I know a lot of you don't study it as close as I do, but there's a lot of little games and nuances that are used to manipulate. I'll use the word manipulate to get the results that they're looking for, which I think's wrong. I mean, honest to goodness, we have early voting now. I think it's wrong that voting day is on Tuesday. Voting day ought to be on Saturday. Are you kidding me? When everybody's not working, we should be early voting for a month if we wanted to. It's, you know, we should be doing everything we can to encourage. And you're right that the news media and print media. I want to say something about WEBY though. Every single election year that I can remember, WEBY has dedicated hours of time for all the candidates. I mean, in the Owens Merritt race, they got an hour apiece on WEBY on a 25,000 watt radio station that covers the whole area they were running in. And I think radio probably has done a pretty good job, but the print media,
We used to see that with the local Santa Rosa paper, and we don't.
no, it's.
There was I didn't see much coverage at all. Did a lack of print coverage? Did a lack of coverage work against the incumbents?
Well, I think so. Absolutely. I mean, angry people are going to show up to vote. You know, they really are, and I think that's what happened. Well, that was a very interesting conversation, Deborah, and you being the reporter and me the opinionated, whatever my title
Opinionated
is.
horsefly.
Oh, opinionated horsefly. We've got a couple more races to look at. A state Republican committee man, had 3 people in that race.
Can you quickly explain what that person does?
Yes, the state committee man is kind of the go-between between the local Republican Party and the state party. And they will be making trips periodically to different meetings to, you know, assess what we need to do and things to make the party stronger. Martin Simmons, my neighbor, you know, we laughed about this a lot because Martin Simmons and I were also running for a precinct captain in the next race, and it's a very we're only precinct 30, so small grouping of people, and so we battled it out all night. At one time I had him by 1 vote, you know, and we were trying to, you know, what's the math on that? Who voted for this one and didn't vote? Because the precinct committee man is you pick 3 out of 4, so. You know, these are 2 Republican Party things, and I just want to thank everybody for the massive showing of support that you gave me. Some of my neighbors saw me as I was leaving the polls and said, "Hey, we're on our way to vote for you." So that's good.